Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rebuild of PG, where we talk about anything with concrete restoration or in the construction world. My name is Rafael,
And I'm Julio.
and today with us we have a special guest. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
All right. Thank you for having me here today. Really appreciate it. My name is Will. I'm a general contractor and I specialize in impact windows and doors. Been in the business a little bit more than 10 years now. Started basically right after high school. The way I got into windows and doors, it was actually started working with a company. I was the warehouse manager and the permit manager. So that's how I got introduced into the whole impact windows and doors. That way I started getting to know the permit process, how everything functions. I got to know more of the components of each windows and really got interested in doing that kind of work. I worked there for 3 years. And then I started working with you guys in the concrete restoration as well, which is an amazing experience learning
Good
that.
memories.
Yeah, absolutely. After that, I pretty much work on getting the license, and I still right now do some concrete restoration as well as impact windows and doors. So everything has come together over time to have a great experience in the construction world.
There's a lot of relationships, sorry to interrupt you, when it comes to window and concrete restoration. So that's great for you that you got comfortable with the window by working in a warehouse and knowing the restoration. You put it together and you know that windows had a lot to do with restoration. Water intrusion, most of the time they go into the structure. So that was a good choice for you. So
Yeah, no,
congratulations on
absolutely.
that one.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
While we've been working in condominiums, I've seen people switch out their windows. And we've been working on the exterior. I've never seen a window company put up a swing stage to access like the 40th floor, right? They do everything from the inside. So how do you get the screws? How do you caulk around correctly 5-foot tall windows that are already on like a 3-foot high wall? How do you access that and do the repairs on the outside without throwing a swing stage?
So you take advantage of the window itself, right? So if it's an open window, meaning single hung or a horizontal roller that can open, then you have a way to access on the outside. Sometimes if it's a fixed window where obviously you can't open the window, or if the window is too big and you can't access all the way, you have no choice and put a swing stage because there's no other way around it. You got to make sure that when you complete that caulking on the outside, that it seals. Otherwise, you're gonna have a leak eventually over time for sure.
So you've mentioned a bunch of different types of windows. You mentioned single hung, horizontal rollers, picture windows. So for those that don't live in this world, that don't understand that, can you just go into a very quick overview of the different types of windows and more or less how they operate?
Yeah, so we have what we call a single hung. Up in upper state and different kind of manufacturers do double hung, meaning both panel, the one on top and the one at the bottom, they both move, which is really nice. Down here, based on pressures and regulations, manufacturers only do a single hung. They can't really do a double hung. You have another type of window that is very similar. It's a horizontal roller. So it's the same idea, but it goes horizontally, as the name says. Now, that one could be made in two ways. You can have a 2-panel system, or you have a 3-panel, meaning that the one in the middle stays stationary, and then the ones on the sides, they open and close. Also, you have fixed windows, which by the name obviously is a fixed window. You can't really open it and close. Beautiful for bathrooms and different
It's
applications.
like for light, yes.
Yeah, just light coming in, it helps with the environment. Also, you have project outs. They are basically almost like a casement. A casement is imagine like a door where you have hinges on one side and you crank it. I don't know if you've seen those, the one that you crank.
Yes.
Like
And
old
it
school.
like an old school, and it opens
Right.
like a door. That's a casement. Now the project out is a little different. It has the hinges on top and it opens from the bottom. So there's a lot of high rises applications on those because they just open. They have a limitation on how much they can open.
Due to safety.
For safety, correct, yeah.
So somebody can't jump out the window.
Yes. So
Even
somebody
even
just
even the
jumps.
single hung, we had bump into those kind of issues that you have to have a stopper that it doesn't open.
It doesn't
more-
allow you to open more than 4
more than
inches.
4
yeah.
inches, yeah.
That's right.
So I have a
Yeah.
question because I know, and I'm sure you've read this when you were studying for your GC, there is a minimum square footage of egress that certain openings in certain areas like living rooms, bedrooms have to have
Right.
for emergency purpose so that with firefighters can get in and pull you out. How do you, with those types of windows, I assume you're very limited where you can put them because if you have such a small opening, nobody's going in and out of there.
So egress is a fun thing to look at because if in a room, for example, let's talk about residential for a minute here. If you have a bedroom, you have to have an opening, whether it is a window or a door. For example, the code will allow you, if you have a sliding glass door going out into your patio, into your pool, and then you have a window, you can put that window, fixed window, and leave the door as an egress. So that you could play around that a little bit. Just have to have a way to exit. If I'm not mistaken, I think the square footage you need is 22 square foot, and there's a limit on the size, the minimum size that you have to make that window. And it's actually opening size. Like when you open the window, you have to have certain size. It's not like the window has to be a specific.
It's the opening.
It's the actual opening once
The
you
space that you can fit through.
space
You can fit
exactly
through, yeah.
the physical space that you go through.
So what about in bedrooms, for example, in high rises where you may have a door leading to your balcony, but it's usually in the living room, right? The bedroom itself, you can't go outside. You're not gonna step out your bedroom on 20th floor.
Well, when you talk about high rises, then they don't really, they have, like we talk about, they have the limitations how much you can open it because they don't want nobody jumping out of the window, especially small kids. So the egress part, it doesn't really apply that much into high rises because you don't really have to have access on getting the firefighters come in.
I would say that that's when the alarm system kick in. You should have a sprinkler system.
That's
I
right.
believe because they rely more on a sprinkler system in that. Even if you can open the window area, where are you going? You know,
It takes time, yeah,
It
to
takes
get
time.
the-
So I think that's why it's that's when it kicks in.
I'm sure they gotta have something like on a certain floor and below because I mean a firefighter truck has a big ladder. It can reach probably a couple floors up. So
Yeah.
for those people, I would assume that their restrictions are a little bit different. They would have to have some kind of egress site on their windows in case the hallway's on fire.
Yeah, and I would say that mostly all buildings that we worked at, the windows need egress, regardless of
the safety
of
issue.
the safety issues. Yeah, you could all actually, even though you have that little lock that prevents the window from opening for more than 4 inches, you can actually remove that.
Remove those,
It's a removable part of the window. It's not like a fixed.
The panel itself comes out.
Yeah,
you're
and they
saying.
can open the panel too as well if you need to.
Have you come up with a little sign in case of emergency? Remove these.
That's actually a great
I've
idea.
never seen that. I haven't seen that. That's
now
a good
that you
idea.
mentioned that, that is like only in
That's
case
a
of
great-
emergency, remove these. I
That's a
think
great
that's
idea.
that's a good point right there. Now that you mentioned that,
We should talk to the suppliers to get that into the windows, right?
have a little instruction in the window about that safety issue.
You can't give people booklets, you know, because anytime I get an appliance or something with a safety instruction, first thing that goes to the trash is the booklet.
Yeah. If it has a function, like it could be removed, it should have some kind of a description of,
That's right.
you know, why it's removable. Because now it would just be stationary. So I think that's a good point that we just came
Yeah.
up with right now.
Yeah.
Well, that's a point for you. You're in the window industry, you know. Make that your point with your name on it.
We'll definitely do.
So for us, we've specialized, you know, in concrete restoration, painting, and waterproofing. Those three specifically because whenever we do restorations on buildings, almost always those three are included at a minimum. Especially when we're doing recertifications, those are the top three. You have to waterproof, you have to paint the building, you have to restore the building. For you're doing interior remodel now, and you have experience in windows. How often are both of those combined to where I want to remodel this and do my windows?
I would say, especially in residential, a lot of times when I go do the windows, they always want to do something else, especially kitchens and bathrooms and interior remodels. I've come across a lot lately is that people don't want to have arches, the shapes anymore. You know, when you go to a house, most of the houses back in the 70s and the 80s, people started having like
More
arches.
modern
Like the
now with
semicircle arches?
Yeah, or have like a single hung and then the half circle on top. You know?
Oh, yeah, I've
So
seen those.
most people now they come to me and say, "Hey, can we make this square more contemporary,
this. Contemporary,
more
more modern.
modern.
Yeah.
modern look?" So I'm finding myself a lot of times where I go in and I have to square the opening, and you can actually give you the chance to put a full window now instead of having an arch on top. So I would say interior renovation is a big aspect of installing windows and doors because every time you go in, it's a construction. At the end of the day, you have to cut the drywall, you have to cut some of the stucco, and some repairs have to happen all the time. So they're pretty intricate between each other, I would say so.
Yeah. Do you bump into a lot of flip? You know, there's a lot of investors out there that doing flip house.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm actually working in a few jobs. We're doing complete gut of the property, not only windows. We're doing, framing, reframing, re-drywall, restructuring of the ceiling, a bunch of other stuff that actually the window is the gatekeep into getting to those projects. So kind of helps me getting there.
I've seen vans and trucks rolling around, companies that dedicate themselves only to, say, closets, or companies that only do like bathroom remodels or like kitchen cabinet remodels. I don't know anything about interior. I've never done it. Honestly, I don't want to do it. But is it that different? Is it that hard? Or is it that unique doing a bathroom versus a closet versus a kitchen that it's more likely you'll find a specialized person for that than just a company that does it all? Is it really that different? And if it is, like, which one is your least favorite to have to do in an interior remodel?
That's a great question. So the biggest difference that I found between exterior renovations like concrete restoration and interior renovations is the details. There's a huge list of details that go into interior renovations: customer choices, colors, wood or no wood, marble, quartz. Like, there's a lot of things that come into play when you're doing a kitchen. It's nice when you see it completely, when it's completed, but there's a lot that goes into it. So I would say doing bathrooms is actually, I like it. It's fun to do the bathrooms. The kitchens are crazy to do, I would say. It's really hard to do the kitchen. There's a lot of measurements and countertops that have to be on point, because when you bring that in and something is off by an inch, then you can put the fridge in. That's the worst.
You need
That's
to
the
be
worst
precise.
decision.
That's
You
a lot
gotta-
of precision.
Yeah.
Because you can't make the refrigerator bigger or smaller.
That's right. And then once everything is in, you got to make sure everything fits tight, because then the final look is what you're looking at. So it's really, really hard to get everything on point. But bathrooms, they're actually fun to do. I like to do the waterproofing, because we did waterproofing concrete restoration. So it kind of like, you
feel comfortable.
Yeah, you feel comfortable doing that. So it is fun to do. And seeing the final product, see people liking their space now, it's amazing. It really fulfills what I do. So
Now let me ask you a question. And this is going to be a question more of things that happen to us when we do renovation and concrete restoration on these old buildings. What have you find on these old houses that you guys completely gut that you say, oh man, how did this get away when they build it?
a lot of framing, people put, like, the builders, you could see them crooked, you could see them missing a lot of wood, especially in the trusses, and I don't know if they were drugs or alcohol back then, or whatever that is. But yeah, I feel like also back in those times when those houses were built, the regulations of permitting and inspections were a little bit more loose than what they are now.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of ways that, obviously
People got away with a lot of things back in the days, and that's the thing, that we see those things now in this structure that was done 100 years ago, and now what we got today, that we can get away with nothing these days, because now we have engineering inspection, we got building inspection, we got the owners always looking around. So
no, absolutely. And also, I think one of the things that changed Florida construction business is the unfortunate collapse
Champlain
of that.
Towers?
Yeah, the collapse of the building in what's the city?
Southside.
I think that changed completely the game here in South Florida.
Have you seen a big effect since that happened?
Actually, I got a project that I've been having since last year. I'm dealing with it still, and I'll walk you through what it was. So this was a building in Wellington, not even by the beach. It was in Wellington. We're doing the closing up the patio, right? They have a little new wall. They want to put some windows in the back of the house and the back of the apartment. It's a second floor. It's a 5-story building. Very not really big, right? So the guys were installing the windows, and we noticed that there's a little piece of the concrete that fell, and it looked like a piece of rebar. So when the inspector came and said, you need to have concrete restoration on the rebar.
Okay.
I said, okay, no problem. So I had to get an engineer. I think I contacted you, and you gave me a contact, and I got reached out to the engineer. She got me the paperwork. I submitted to the city. We started doing the chipping, and we actually was a post-tension cable that was exposed in the building. So now it's a whole new ballpark.
Oh, man.
Now you know what a
Post-tension
post-tension
works,
cable.
not
That's
fun.
it. So I couldn't do anything anymore. I exposed the post-tension cable. And then I had to call back the engineer, and we're still now in the process of getting it resolved. And one of the solutions that we have to do now is put a C-channel, a steel C-channel across the whole balcony. Just for that, we're talking about like a foot maybe of exposed. Yeah, we have to put a C-channel all across the whole balcony now.
What's a C channel?
A C-channel is a piece of
it for?
steel.
What is it gonna
it's
do?
a steel, just like to hold the edge.
So yeah, it attaches to both. It has a plate at the end with screws.
Yeah.
And that's gonna basically hold the whole
encasing.
structure up.
So now you're putting the load on the columns on either side.
That's right. Yeah.
So with a post-tension cable, it's kind of finicky work. Was it the cable that was like rotting away?
Yeah.
Or it was just exposed?
My guess is when they did the pour of concrete, the cable ended up on the bottom, like at the bottom
so
of the
now
slab.
you have like less coverage.
Yeah,
So
so it
cable.
eventually
So
just.
what about the protection of the cable?
Yeah, because it usually has like a rubber
The
casing or a
cable
plastic
usually
casing.
come in a
This
plastic.
one, this I don't know if the engineer said it was a pre-tension or post-tension. It might have been a pre-tension in this case because it didn't have that casing, that
Oh, so it
usual
was a pre-
casing.
okay,
so
so-
it was like a loose cable.
It was a
wasn't-
loose cable that they tie it out, they pour it, and it
Correct.
holds from the same concrete.
So I guess
Directly from
we'll
the
call it a pre-tension
but,
cable.
Well, that's kind of interesting because if it doesn't have the coverage, then it's locked by other concrete besides where the repairs. That's what I would think.
What he's saying is,
the thing
if
on
you
the-
push, because if they ever did a repair there on that cable and then they poured it, if that cable lost any kind of tension and you pour it, it can sink the cable down a little bit. So now instead of having like a 1.5 inch or 2 inch coverage that you should have, now you got like an inch or less of coverage. You're more exposed to
Yeah.
chlorides, and because it doesn't have the protection, the cable's just gonna start rusting away.
Yeah, I mean that's a unique case.
That is a different.
Yeah,
it's very unique because like I say again, if it doesn't have the cover, there's no tension to worry about because it's all hold on from the same concrete that is beyond the point.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm getting?
I agree. I
Because
agree with
now
you.
it's not movement.
Yeah, but
There's
you
no movement.
remember, Julio, that once it starts rusting somewhere, it expands everywhere, and the minute it rusts anywhere, it expands that concrete. So now not even the concrete's holding it.
Yeah, no, but what you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, no,
The cable is hooked with the concrete.
Right? Yeah, it's
So
the
there's no
concrete's holding
movement.
it.
Even if you expose this whole area, it shouldn't move nowhere.
Unless it's rusted and expanded.
No, because there's no movement. Because what the problem with the post tension cable is that the cable is in a loose
Yeah, it's a loose
capture.
sleeve.
So if you break it,
it
it
snaps.
breaks.
Yeah.
But if it's in the concrete, where it's going, the concrete,
Yeah.
there's no tension.
Well, there is tension because it's pre-tensed.
Yeah, it's
So there is still tension in that member. So the minute you snap it, even if it's being held by the rest of the concrete, it's still gonna have a force there. That might snap.
Yeah, but
And remember that
tension is more to be in place when they
that
pour.
rust. Like, we've seen the rebars when they rust. That rust is basically dust. It's not that there's no
Yeah.
friction holding that thing there anymore. But that's intense. So with
So it got kind of hard. A year later, you
Yeah.
still didn't.
It's still doing that, yeah. For windows and doors, see, combined with concrete
I
restoration,
see it.
like, oh my God.
So you don't let's go back to kitchens. You don't design it. Somebody gives you the design.
That's right.
So at what point, let's say if I'm a homeowner, right? I want to remodel my kitchen. I get a company to design it. They may hire you to do the actual work. At what point in the installation can you no longer say, well, I can't change the design now without incurring additional costs?
I would say that at the moment you order the cabinets, because when you order the cabinets, you already have a design, you have color, you have handles, you have there's a lot of choices that were made at the moment where you place that order. Once you place that order, if you have to change anything at all, it resets the whole thing. Let's say you have an island that you're putting all the cabinets on the island, and then you want to have a few cabinets that are 30 inches wide, and then you want to have another one that has a little garbage disposal, and then all of a sudden you don't want to have the garbage disposal anymore. You want to have a 30-inch. But now the 30-inch don't fit anymore because the garbage disposal was a different size. So now the whole thing has to be reset, and you have to rethink about the design on how the cabinets and the drawers will look like.
What about for plumbing and electrical? My father's doing a remodel in his home, and he ran a cable underground in a sleeve and brought up in the middle of the kitchen because he was going to put
For the island, yeah.
Yeah, for the island, right? It was electricity for the island. We've done that a few times for a couple things because I think the code says if it's more than like 4 foot on an island, you need a dedicated outlet to it.
That's right.
So, I mean, if you put that cable in the middle and then the island changes just by a bit, or plumbing on the sinks, change locations on it. So what's the first thing? Let's say you're remodeling a kitchen. Assuming you're not changing the walls, what's your step-by-step process for the kitchen?
We'll start first, obviously, with the design and what they currently have. For example, some people, they have right now on their island, they have the range or the microwave or something else, electrical components, nothing with plumbing. But now for the new remodel, now they want to have plumbing. So if that's the case, then we got to do what your father is doing, which is cut out all the concrete, run the pipe, and bring it in the island. That will be the first step, just getting all the details completed, see what the customer final vision is, and then go from there, doing the measurements, with the demolition. After the demolition, then we can actually see what's behind the walls, because one thing is what you see on the surface. Once you start breaking things apart, then you start noticing the problems.
You go more
right?
into details.
Yeah, and then you're like, oh, this wasn't how we thought it was. Now we got to change this. Now we got to do this. So that's the second phase of it. Once we do the demolition, if we have to make any changes, we'll talk with a designer or engineer, make the changes on the drawing. At that point, we're ready to place the orders for the cabinets and make all the small detail choices. And then installation, of course. Before the countertops, we have to make sure that all the rough electrical and plumbing is completed.
Right.
One of the things I run into most issues is, for example, the plumbing. Electrical, you can always move around if you have to move an outlet an inch or two. But plumbing is a different story, especially if you're running plumbing underground. Because once you got to make sure your sizes and your measurements are correct. Because once you run that pipe on the concrete, there's not a lot of
there's a lot of limited space you have there. You can do some L's and some elbows and stuff like that.
You can move it around, but it will limit.
It's a limit.
It will limit the space of the cabinet that you have on there, because you're limiting all that.
Some cutting or making different shape
That's
on the
right.
inside of
That's
the.
right.
Yeah, I've seen that happen.
Running the plumbing, make sure it's in the right spot. It's very, very pivotal to make sure that the sink is in the right place and everything else fits. After that, then is pretty much backsplashes and all the little details, and you're done at that point. But it's a very extensive process. It's very detail oriented project, and you got to make sure everything is on point.
I've seen two different types of installations when it comes to the floors, especially on kitchens. I've seen where people have put cabinets on there and then they run the tile up to that cabinetry. And then I've seen it the other way where you put the entire floor, you floor the entire thing, and then you put the cabinets on top. In your experience, which is the best way to do it?
I think the best way to do it is run the tile all the way
to the baseboard.
It creates a separation between the slab and your cabinets. So if there's any humidity on the slab and you put your cabinets sitting on top of the slab, then you're gonna take all that in. So I will always suggest going all the way with the tile. It's always better.
And you're always going to have a better finish too.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit more cost, but at the end of the day, if you ever have to replace a cabinet or something, you've got tile there already. You don't have to worry about, especially if it's a slightly different size.
Yeah, and also the finish. If you do the tile against it, then the guy might not cut it the right way and might look a little a little weird. So you run that tile all the way to the end, and then you put the cabinets on top. You're 100% with a nice finish.
So I have a bit of just a question. I'm always curious. I've seen some videos, people explain, hey, the super rich, like what stuff do you have that most normal people don't know about? Like what have you seen in these houses that either you've worked on or you just seen that's like, oh my God, you can have that in your house? Like, why didn't I know about this? So have you seen anything like that before?
Yeah, there's one house that has the biggest island I've ever seen in my life. That thing is huge. I think it has like 5 feet wide, but like 10 feet long. Like
you can play ping pong on it.
You could do whatever you want in that thing. Like it's huge. And I've seen a lot of coffee stations. I've seen a lot of built-in coffee stations. It's very convenient for somebody living there. So you put your little cup in, and then you press a button, and everything just makes a coffee for you.
Coffee is big.
Yeah, coffee is the main thing that everybody does.
Cafe right in your little Starbucks right in your house.
Yeah. Coffee is big.
Something else that some people might find it crazy, but a lot of custom homes, they do 2 laundries, one on the bottom floor, one on the top floor, and it kind of like blows people's mind, like why you want so many washing machines? But it actually makes sense. You don't have to
carry
go all the way down. Yeah,
that's for your everyday thing, and this is just for a house thing.
You may call it lazy, but if I can make my life a little more comfortable, I'm gonna have a laundry next to my drawer. Like the minute the clothes are dirty, bam, toss it right in there.
No, but I think what I think is the most challenging part is people in their taste.
Yeah,
because there's always it's very hard to always get the people. You can be doing something now. We bump into a lot of that in the middle of the project. They say, oh, you know what, I don't like it, now I want to change it. And you're like, oh my God. I heard people that actually done the whole kitchen on one color, and then the wife come and say, oh no, I can't stand it. And it happens a lot when interior renovation, because you're dealing with these people, especially talking about high-end houses. You're dealing with the taste of these people.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And when you have a lot of money, you lose your taste.
You don't care.
You don't even know what's your taste.
You'll knock down the house, rebuild it again. If you have money, you don't care.
I mean, and it's hard. It's hard to actually make. There's some clients that it's actually hard to make them happy. You finish a project and then like you can see on their eyes that they're not happy. It's not you. It's this that they're not a happy person.
Well, you don't know. That's the thing. Like anybody, you can make 3D renderings all you want. You can make designs on paper all you want. Until you see it in front of you, you're not gonna know if you really love it or not. And that brings to mind a question for you specifically: has been better to work with very wealthy clients that can decide to change everything at a drop of the hat and pay for it, or clients that may not have an option and like once the job is done, it's done. They don't have the money to change it, assuming nothing was done wrong on your part. They don't have the money to change their minds out. So like, what do you prefer working in?
So I've had both cases where a person with money or a person with no money who has been an amazing client. I think it's a person's game. You know, it's depending on the people. Like you can find people with a lot of money who are really, really hard to deal with because they're second guessing themselves. They don't like it. They ask you to change it. And a lot of times, believe it or not, people with money, they ask more favors and more free stuff than the people with no money.
Maybe that's why they have money.
That's why the money's there.
That's why they got the money, right? So it becomes very challenging because at that point, as a business owner, then you're dealing with, okay, I have to kind of help this client help me because at the end of the day, it's my client and you want to make sure your business is running well and you have more business in the
you want
future.
references too.
And you want more reference. Right. So every time I go to a client, it's like, let's see how when we flip the coin to see what it is because you never know. You never know how it is.
Yeah, so it's not like you go to like a big mansion, like, oh man, this person's gonna be a nightmare. You gotta wait to meet them.
Yeah, you will always assume if you're dealing with somebody that has more higher budget or lives in a better neighborhood, they're gonna be more picky about the things that they want and how they want them done and how they want everything to look at the end. That's expected. That's not a problem. But you can find both. Yeah.
But I would think for us as contractor, though, our goal is always to see a finished product.
That's right.
The faster, the better. Sometimes it's good to deal with this unique people, but sometimes it gets a little annoying.
Yeah.
Because for us as a contractor, we want to get in, get out, and go.
I always tell my clients, before we do anything, I always try to get as many details on paper as possible. Because I always tell them, the moment I start breaking this up, you're going to be on me to finish the job. They have no rush doing the kitchen renovation until now. Now that everything is pulled apart, they're like, oh, I want to finish tomorrow.
Have a kitchen. Now
I don't have a kitchen, right? So before we go into anything, any phases, make sure everything is on point. Make sure all the details are written down.
Some people would think, change things up. As long as you charge them, they're willing to pay. Cool. Let them keep changing their mind. Let them keep changing. It's more money for you. But I've noticed in our jobs, the more changes you have, the more change orders get submitted, profit margin starts to drop.
Yeah. No matter how you look at it.
It's these small jobs where it's like go in, get out real quick, where you have the best profit margins. And I guess it's just over time, unexpected things come up, more costs, things that you may not necessarily be able to bill for. And then over time, material prices change as well. So if you're there a few weeks versus a couple months, you may have an increase, especially in volatile materials like lumber. That changes every day.
Every day. Yeah. Do you, another question, do you work a lot with designers?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's I see that, so that's really unique. And I have seen some designers that they really get real deep into designing this property. They ask him some special question like,
they look at things very differently.
What do you do on your free time? Do you spend a lot of time with your grandkids, depending on the age of the client? Those give them ideas to actually create areas.
You want to tailor areas.
So they want to get so into their world.
I always suggest to my clients, if you have the budget for it, get a designer. Because I can suggest as much as I want to. I don't have the vision that a designer does, right? I can execute it, but if you want something, if you're looking for that, have something nicely done, I will always suggest getting a designer.
Something personalized for your likes.
Absolutely.
You ever thought about incorporating a designer in your company?
I partnered with one that is in Boca Raton. I have an architect up in West Palm that I work with, and she's pretty good on regular projects, getting stuff together and getting some designs in. So yeah, I think it has become something for me that I have to have on hand, or at least a contact of.
Right.
When a customer comes to me,
contact.
I have to have a good relationship with the designer, because any changes I have to be aware of to change my pricing and whatnot. But yeah, I think it's a very important part, especially if you're doing renovations, interior renovations.
Would
if
you
you don't,
consider just hiring a designer and having one in your staff later
absolutely,
on?
yeah. Eventually, that's the goal.
That's
to-
the goal. Yeah,
yeah, that's the goal. Having a bigger company to hire
The goal to
everybody.
come into the office and make sure how the design is doing.
Yeah, you have more
That's the
control.
goal. That's the goal. You know.
Yeah, you have more
Specific,
control
yeah.
at that point. So
There's anything else that you want to let those future clients know about you?
yeah, so right now we are working on a rebranding since we're going into more high-end custom homes, and I'm actually going into new constructions as well. Right now we're finishing up 2 new houses in West Palm Beach, and we're about to start another one. They're spec homes. So a spec home is something that we design, me and the investor, to fit the market. And a custom home is when a client actually builds with a designer. So that's the difference between the two.
So spec home is you with the designer, and then the custom home is the client with the designer.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the difference between them. So I've been doing a lot of spec homes lately. So yeah, so we're doing a rebranding, going into high-end custom builds and stuff like that. So
Great. Man, that's great to hear.
yeah. So hit us up. I'll be sending you guys the link for the website. So we're working on our
Sounds good.
website. Very nice.
It will be down the link. The link will be under the podcast when.
And we're actually trying to get an office as well. So we're getting a lot of stuff going into place to make this happen. So yeah.
Great. And what's the good thing about working with your company? What's that you're gonna give these clients out there that are different from others?
Yeah, so I would like to say that I try to get, or I get all the details down. Like I make sure that everything is down to the last screw if I have to. And I always work with the client. I always make sure that they're happy at the end of the day. It's very important for contractors to be able to transfer information from our field, being in the field and explaining to the client, look, this is what's gonna happen.
And that's a great technique because you are dealing directly with the client. So
That's right.
It's from you to the client. And then after you guys are in communication and everything is good, then the other part will come in. So I think that gives a lot of comfort to the client. Because some of these companies, they have a salesperson that's actually deal with the client and stuff like that. But when you as an owner are dealing directly, that's very powerful.
Yeah.
And that's going to give you a lot of success.
Thank you very much, Will, for coming by and explaining some of the intricacies of interior design and windows. As always, we try to be as educational as possible, make sure our viewers understand, because it's a completely different world. It's one thing to be the person, hey, I want this remodeled, and then you may not have certain facts considered, and it's good to have an expert that says, well, you got to look at this end and know that these things can happen. So we appreciate you coming by. We appreciate you taking your time here. I know you're a very busy man, and hopefully we'll have some more interactions, you and I, and on future shows. But thank you again for coming by.
Thank you for inviting me.
And remember, this mic are open for you. Right?
I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
We always thank our viewers, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.